Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Pause for the Truth, the podcast that tells you what's really going on and why. We are excited to have our Dr. Kane. Can you believe it's our 19th broadcast? I mean, that may not sound like a lot to a lot of people. However, if only they knew our journey and how we got started, right?
Especially, yeah, it's hard for me to count to 20. So once I get past 20, I'm in trouble.
And when we do the flyer, we put the episode just so that we can kind of track where we are. But I'm with you on that, Dr. Kane. See, because I have to remember now what was last week.
Right.
What number was last week? So anywho, we're super excited. We're waiting on one of our other guests who just texted to say that he's still experiencing some technical difficulties. So we're just gonna shoot the breeze for a few moments. We do have Addison Sims, one of our guests on tonight. How are you this evening, Addison?
I'm well. How's everyone?
Oh, so far so good for a Tuesday, counting down. Okay, so does anybody feel the same way as I do? It looks like December just started like 5 days ago, and it's already the 14th. Anybody else feel that way?
Yeah, it is zooming. It is zooming.
Well, the actual December is zooming, but these Christmas holidays look like they started in June. With all it,
All
with
the
all the Black
decorations and stuff.
Fridays that we kept having. Look like every month we had a Black Friday. So
Hmm.
And somebody was telling me today that they've even seen Valentine's decorations or cards and things out already. I'm like, what? We haven't even gotten past my birthday next month. What is going on?
is
Economy's
that a
Is that
booming.
sneaky way to remind me of your
that
birthday?
was I did that, didn't I? I just slid it right on in that
Yeah, you
next month
slipped it right through.
is my birth month. Well, I think the thing that we can talk about now while we wait for our other guests to join us, and hopefully he'll be able to get on shortly, is how important it is for us to be safe and watch our backs while we're out. To remind our loved ones that unfortunately there are bad people out there, and bad people who are looking to prey on unsuspecting people. And so we need to make sure that as you're going out doing your shopping, that you are paying attention, watching your back, looking over your shoulder. And ladies, I have to remind myself as well, don't take every credit card that you have out with you on every shopping expedition, because somebody could easily grab your handbag. And did I just age myself when I say handbag? Your
Yep.
purse. And and now they have access to your driver's license, your birth certificate, your social security card, and your 10 credit cards. So really try to limit how much you have in your purse to give thieves less to do. Now, and I can tell you, I can share, and then our second guest has joined us, but just to share that I made an investment a couple of months ago, and I'm not promoting a ring, and I purchased a ring camera. And sure enough, I woke up the next morning to see someone trying to break in our cars. And so I'm laying overnight, I'm snoring, and to wake up the next morning and see that somebody was trying to break in my car. So people, it's that time of season. So tonight we are pleased to have again Addison Sims, and Kory O'Neill has joined us. How are you this evening, Kory?
Doing good. How you doing, Miss Jocelyn?
Doing just wonderful. And you can just say Jocelyn tonight. I know you try to be, I know your mama and grandma raised you right to respect your elders, but it's okay to just call me Jocelyn tonight.
Okay.
Um, and so we are pleased to talk about a very serious subject with our guest tonight. It is something that since I started working with these two gentlemen, I had not paid that much attention to, quite frankly. And so I'm super excited to hear from them, and hopefully you'll learn from them. And of course, we'll let Dr. Kane slide in there, his expertise as our local family practice physician, to talk about gangs and gang prevention. So I'm going to start with Kory. Kory, does Jacksonville have a gang problem?
Most definitely. I know for years It has like went under the radar. But now I would say about statistically 60 to 70% of crimes and violent crimes and murders that happen to our young kids, our youth, are gang related. So but it's a serious problem.
Yeah, right before we started the show, I was watching the news, and they were saying that 2 people showed up at the hospital having had with gunshots. And so I'm sorry, Kory, I know you want me to think of you in a more positive manner, but I thought about you and I wonder if those are any of Kory's clients, because sadly, that's the reality that you've shared with me. So
Yeah.
Addison, you know, a lot of what we talk about or hear about, and either of you can answer the question. I just said you because of a conversation you and I were having the other day. And Dr. Kane, I promise I'm gonna let you, I'm gonna bring you into conversation, but let's talk a little bit about adverse childhood experiences, because I believe, now nobody's told me, but I believe that a lot of what's happening with our youth is as a result of things that may be going on in the house and on in the household. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. Maybe they haven't, of an ACE score, Adverse Childhood Experience. That's the ACE, and it can be anything, any type of trauma, any type of happening, tragedy, event that's negative. So, it can be witnessing domestic violence in the home. It could be witnessing interpersonal and community violence. It could be witnessing violence at school. It could be abuse or neglect from any type of caregiver, whether a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, anything. And when you have those negative experiences, they do have, some consequences on how your mind develops. And if you, don't acknowledge or, handle that negative impact on your mind, you are more likely to repeat the patterns you witnessed. So yeah, those adverse childhood experiences definitely, I could say, increase probability for someone to, engage or involve themselves in gang or street violence, for sure.
Yeah, when you said something about domestic violence, I've often heard on, in the news, when you hear folks who are abusive, they'll bring up those things that happened in their childhood, and so that was normal for them. It's not a justification or an excuse, rather, but it is. Kory, would you like to add to that?
Pretty much what Addison said was accurate. It was the nail on the head. But I think it's the untreated trauma that these kids go through. The untreated. I shared on Sunday, a lot of times we bury stuff and not deal with it. And when we bury things and not deal with it, it begins to grow and fester. And so the things that these kids experience growing up is now a part of their reality today. So he did a great job explaining it. But I think one of the biggest problems we have is we don't address these traumas that our youth are experiencing.
Right. Yeah. It has to come out. Your mind has to process it one way or another. It can be positively, through conversation, venting, therapy is the ideal solution, or at least attempt to deal with that. Or it's going to process through your actions, whether it's repeating the violence, repeating the abuse, neglect you dealt with, repeating the aggression that you saw. If you are used to seeing adults interact aggressively and violently as a child, especially those intimate, those close to you, your family members and your friends, your brain has to process that, and you're going to replicate or, mimic or reproduce that behavior, because that's all.
And I'm sorry, Addison and Kory, I failed to mention that Addison is with the Jacksonville Center, the Center for Child Rights, and Kory is with the Partnership for Child Health. So forgive me for not acknowledging the organizations that you're with. Dr. Kane, did you have a question?
Well, actually, one of the things that when I look at some of these kids, the few kids I see, I remind you guys every week, as I got older, so did my patients, and so I'm getting closer to a geriatrician more than anything else, not just geriatric in age, but geriatric in my patients.
I resemble that. Watch it.
However, I do one of the things when I was growing up, or I shouldn't say growing up, when I was maturing as a physician, I always looked to see a change in behavior in the kids at home, or kids that I did know in my office. Look for changes in their behavior to see if they were experiencing any trauma, at home that they may or may not have talked with their parents about. Most of the time, they hadn't talked with their parents about it. But then also sometimes I always had to look for child abuse within the home in itself. So the things that I would look for as far as those kids are concerned is to see if any changes in the behavior. What I ask for these young men to answer is what things might a parent notice in their child that might indicate they may be in a gang.
Kory, you want to go first?
Sure. One of the things is a change in behavior, and very specific behavior. When your child is not being rude or disrespectful, and then like that, they become rude, disrespectful, has no respect for authority, anger, aggression. But one of the things I think listeners need to understand is, especially for our young boys, when your son has a strong interest for violent rap music, that is a strong sign that they may be involved in gang activity.
Wow.
One of the cover-ups for gang activities in Jacksonville is their entertainment groups. Follow the news recently. There was a shootout in Riverside with a very known rapper, that's affiliated with a gang group. So again, I had to educate myself on it once I became working with a partnership. One of the songs that's produced by a gang member, my children were singing, and I was just, I'm a pastor, I'm off my head because I like the beat to it. And then when I started working, and they shared with me, this is a gang member that has probably several bodies up under him, which means they've committed heinous crimes. And I was appalled, and I went home and I told my kids, I'll literally break their neck if I hear the song again in my house. But again, I was ignorant and I was unaware. So that's a very good question, because a lot of parents are ignorant. They're unaware. They think it's just innocent music, and it's not. So especially that last piece about that violent music, want to be a rapper, intrigued in guns and know more about guns than they should know. All these are warning signs.
Definitely, yeah. If it's okay for me, adding to that, I used to be a child abuse investigator and a dependency case manager, and a lot of times, the signs or indicators of gang involvement is definitely truancy. Saw that a lot. Truancy is a big indicator. It doesn't mean it's always what's going on, but just that tendency to just skip school. That self-agency and independence that they're, displaying and employing comes from that gang involvement. And when you feel like you're already a part of something, more fun, more serious, life or death, interesting, earn more money than going to school, is you feel like school's just not a priority. Education is not important.
If I one moment, Dr. Ken, if I can
Go
just
ahead.
piggyback off of what Addison says, every client that I have that's gang affiliated, meaning they're affiliated with a gang, or a person of interest, means they're a person of interest in every one of them that's over the age of 12 years old are not active in school right now. Addison and I just had a participant, 12 years old, hadn't been to school in over four weeks, over a month. So every single participant of mine that's over the age of 12 is not actively engaged in educational activities.
Well, I was going to ask another question, but because you mentioned that, I have to go along this route. What are they doing in the school to identify those youths that are not coming to school, seeing as how this can help? Maybe an indicator is probably an indicator of that they may be getting into gang activity. I mean, whether they tell the parents, whether I remember back in my day, they used to send out truant officers. I don't know what they do these days.
They still do. They still do. And that's one of the gaps in the process in the system that we could fill to help address the issue. It's the same solution. Truancy, they send out an SRO. They might do a wellness check. That's after they contact the parents.
SRO, that stands for
School resource officer.
Okay.
So,
All right.
SRO stands for school resource officer. And oftentimes, assistant principal, whatever administrator is dealing with it, they'll contact the parent. And oftentimes the parent says, I don't know where that child is during the day. I wish they went to school. I sent them to school. I told them to go to school. They left this morning like they were going for school, and they don't.
So many of the parents don't know.
Oftentimes the parents don't know that the kids are sick. Yeah. Or they do know. It's just once a child has reached that stage, their rebellion is off the chart. I don't want to use rebellion in terms of a negative connotation.
Parents might be afraid, though. You think about that. Are the parents fearful if it's a single mom or a grandma or grandparent, period, who's raising a child?
Yeah, we have many parents who tell us, I'm sure Kory's had similar experiences, I'd rather my son or daughter be in jail than on the streets. I probably have 3 different clients who have called the authorities, the police, on their own children because they know their child is safer in juvenile detention than on the streets.
Probably saving their lives.
Mm-hmm. They feel like they're doing the right thing, which I understand, definitely understandable. So I mean, but back to the original question of how the process is. That is a gap currently that I feel like we could address.
So we need to maybe, Ms. Turner, we can also look at. We probably, if we'd have thought about it, if I'd have known this, would have had someone from Duval County Public Schools on board.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's an opportunity for us to have them and have them listen in to what we're hearing. And like one of our listeners did ask the question, what can the community do to intervene at this early age?
I mean, a lot of it is child specific, in my opinion. Again, I'm just theorizing, but a lot of it's child specific. One of the main reasons, this may attach on to further questions either you may have, but one of the main reasons children, especially our young men, become involved with gang and gang life and organized crime is a sense of belonging, the sense of family. And these families are already so overburdened with just survival. And when your mom or your dad or both is working or are working 2 jobs during the day and they get home at night just in time to give you dinner, just in time to lock up the house, make sure everything's okay, and go to sleep, and you're focusing on survival, it's hard to foster and enrich your child in that family, that sense of belonging, sense of purpose, sense of role in the family unit. When the human doesn't have that, you seek it elsewhere, whether it's the military, police, sports, and then oftentimes it's gangs. So we're all, humans are seeking for that sense of belonging, that security, that I want to play a role in something. I want to be instrumental in a bigger picture than me, whether it's, here in Jacksonville, Florida, where a child joins a gang, or, there's a connection, not the same thing, or whether it's a child in Somalia, a teenager in Somalia who joins Al-Shabaab, a militant extremist group. It's the same concept. It's that sense of belonging. It's that purpose. And when you live in, a city that has a strong, urban sense, and you feel like, I don't have much purpose, I don't have much of a future, this is all that's around me, you're going to join it. There's the likelihood you're going to join it.
So as a parent, I found out my kid's in a gang, am I wrong to feel that that's an indicator of me as a failing parent, a parent that has failed his or her child?
I don't believe so. I think there's definitely an opportunity to further, look into it and see about different actions you can take. But I don't think it's a failure, because at the end of the day, we are all, sentient beings that make our own decisions, whether you're a minor or an adult, and that child doesn't have to join that gang. It's an opportunity to possibly attempt to do more, but that doesn't mean you
Right.
fail. No, I mean the grips of vices in this world in our communities are strong, and they reach. And the gang is going to be, well, not the specific gang, but the gang lifestyle and the streets and crime has been a vice and societal ill since the beginning of time, and always will be. So it doesn't mean you're a failure. No.
Very good. Very good. Ms. Turner?
Are youth of color more involved in gangs or youth violence than others, Kory?
Most definitely. A caseload of 22. Right now, only one Caucasian is on that list, and the rest of them are African American. And I think that goes back to environment, influence. The question was asked, what can the community do to intervene at an early stage? Is get back to a sense of community, because growing up, I didn't have a father. Not by choice. My dad died when I was 1. My mom was pregnant with my sister, so she had 5 babies, 11-month-old twins, and she was pregnant when my dad passed away. He was sick. But my grandfather stepped in. But I had a coach named Michael Dortch. He coached me from baseball, from 8 or 9, all the way through. I got to high school and decided baseball wasn't what I wanted. But when I got out of school, we all had to bring our homework to the bleachers, do our homework, and Coach Michael was a math whiz. You couldn't go to practice until you got it right, until you finished your homework. And then when you got done, you went home. If your mom worked at night, he would tell you, if I ride by here, you outside the house and put something on you. He wasn't related to us, but it was a sense of community. So my mom didn't have to threaten us with the police. I'm telling Coach Michael Dortch.
Mm-hmm.
And after he makes us do 6-inch killers and run, but even though my father wasn't here physically, I had a surrogate father in the community, and I think we lack that. My son played football up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and he stopped, because it was no sense of community. The coaches are cussing the kids now. They're more worried about winning. The parents fighting against the coaches. The atmosphere is not right, and so my son stopped playing. And then he decided to play again this year. When he got to middle school, he's a beast on the football field. But I believe if we can get back a sense of community back in our African American communities, we can see our communities get back to what it once was, a sense of community.
Yeah, investment.
It takes a village,
I
right?
remember those days, excuse me, Ms. Turner, but I remember the days, exactly what you guys are referencing. Miss Inez would be across the street looking out the window and see what was going on. I sometimes I hated when I went shopping with my parents because they may have run into one of my school teachers while we're shopping. Mm-hmm. And much of the neighbors, if they saw us doing the wrong thing, I'm not advocating childhood punishment, but they had the permission from our parents to tear our little behinds up if they caught us doing something we had no business doing, and then come along and tell a parent what we did, and you got whipped again. And don't let mom get on before dad, because she would whip you, and then your dad would whip you. So, I mean, it sounded very wrong, or I guess some of these parents may think that corporal punishment like that is very wrong, but I didn't turn out that bad, and I'm not beating up on people, or maybe because I'm short to beat up on people, but still, I never did try.
I don't spank my kids. Never have. I think I popped my daughter. She's 15, maybe one time, and she cried. It broke my heart. I could never ever in my life hit her again.
Same here.
And I'm on child number 4. But I think I got beat so much growing up. I got enough beatings for me and my kids and my grandkids. But it was
a different time.
It was the rod of correction, though, for me. I just believe there are other options and other ways to discipline. And I do believe that corporal punishment is all right, but I believe that how people discipline and punish their children has a negative impact on aggression and anger now, beyond the the spankings.
Yeah,
Addison
yeah.
and I just had a Lord, please forgive me. Addison and I just had a incident Friday where the mom called her sons. Y'all didn't know, but some excuse my French, bitch ass niggers, and get out my yard. To a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old. I understand mom's frustration, but what is mom dealing with so bad that she went that low when it came to her sons?
And it becomes a cycle. So now,
exactly,
how the sons communicate, that's what they're used to dealing with. And then mom gets mad when they communicate with her like that. So they communicate like that? Of course not. Of course they're going to communicate with their mom like that. But if that's all they've seen, what can you expect? You have to lead by example. And it becomes a cycle.
They know.
Yep, and everyone just triggers everyone, and it becomes a cycle.
So adverse childhood experiences like youth violence are associated with negative health and well-being outcomes across the life course.
Of course.
And disproportionately impact communities of color.
Right.
Does youth violence increase the risk for certain mental or physical health issues?
Of course. I mean, not to get too scientific, but if these youth, these young men and women, when it comes to street violence, gang lifestyle, one thing that you can never remove from it is the sense of your safety being compromised every moment, way more than what a child should expect, ideally speaking. You shouldn't be worried about you dying on any given day at all, ever, let alone a child, let alone any type of minor or an adult, anyone. And when your brain is still forming, you're still growing, you're still developing. It's so negative for your development. It's so hindering to have your cortisol levels, your stress and fear hormones, to be so high all of the time. And if you are constantly scared for your own existence, your own safety, your own well-being, it's going to have a negative impact on your physical and mental health. We have, the exponential increase in the ADHD, the bipolar disorder, everything, because these kids are so worried. These kids are so scared. They're stressed. They're anxious. The anxiety is unbearable, and we have so much external stimuli. The social media. We have the access to a supercomputer in our hands, in our pockets. So when you're constantly taking in so much information, and the majority of it isn't positive, it's going to have.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Addison, because you're right. I forgot about social media.
I was going to ask.
It's readily available. You know what I mean? And one question I wanted to ask you, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was just so anxious to ask the question that I meant to ask earlier to both of you. Are most of the youth violence that you see males more so than girls? And do you ever see females?
It depends on how you define violence. So statistically speaking, last time I checked, it could have changed. Statistically speaking, the young females in school fight more than the males.
I missed that. What was that?
In junior high, the young ladies fight more than the males.
Okay.
And some of that is because the males don't fight at school, so it's hard to record. There's no statistic for that on when they're fighting. The only stats you can pull are arrests. But in school, in the school system, especially Duval County, the young women fight more than young men. So violence in terms of gun violence and arrests, yes, males. But in school, the girls fight more. But girls attend school more than the boys. So there's no way to really quantify that, that concept statistically speaking. I honestly think it's about even. I mean, we can just put it frank. Girls don't use guns as much as men when they harm each other. And, so.
One of our listeners just said, why do we continue to suggest that social media has this amazing negative effect on youth?
I don't believe social media has a negative effect. I believe it's what they're viewing on social media. Social media is an arbitrary tool. It can be amazing. We work through our phones throughout the day. I touch a computer probably 10% of the time on my phone most of the time. It's not social media. It's what they're choosing to view on social media. I don't think social media has a negative effect.
I think it's the media. It's the media overall.
Yeah.
You know, being cognizant of what we allow our children to look at,
Right.
which allow our children to listen to. Again, I'm kind of like an old school kind of parent when raising my kids. You know, I have to prove it before you view it. You know, kids now always have earpods in their ear. Every now and again, you have to say, "Don't press pause. Give me the earpod. Let me hear what you're listening to."
Right.
You know, let's see what's going into your ear gate. Let me see what's going into your eye gate, because that produces who our children are. And going out every other Thursday, I go out with JSO customer notifications, and we go and we knock on doors of suspected gangs members or people that are person of interest in the gang. And we've seen, I would say, since I started going with them in April, Jocelyn, I've probably seen an increase. Probably from May to July, I've probably seen one person that was female that we went to, but more and more we're starting to see at least one every time we go to a custom. And these are people that have been these are women that have been shot at. These are women that are shooting. These are women that are active in gangs. And the youngest I've seen was 13, the female, and it goes up. So
What's the youngest male you've seen?
The youngest male I've seen was 11.
Wow. Well, you know, it's pretty obvious that it's not social media in itself. And I guess I look at it from an adult standpoint, and that is when we look at, and it's the components of social media is what I'm trying to get to, what you watch, obviously, because even when we look at politics, we look and see how these adults, you know, what they're looking at and their frame of mind and the craziness that we hear some people say and do, and you're going like, where did they get that information from? You know, and we've talked many times, Ms. Turner, as you know, we talked many times about, I'll use COVID as an example, with the outlandish so-called facts that the people get from social media that has no basis whatsoever. So when these kids who should be better at discerning, are not as good as their parents or older adults should be at discerning what's facts. If they go, you know, if the parents believe in it, they, you know, I can understand why younger folks can go to the, for lack of a better description, the dark side of social media.
It's attractive. It's a learning.
But I'm glad, one thing that Kory said that, you know, we didn't really comment on. We shook our head, but I want to get back to it for a real good reason. And Dr. Kane, you kind of alluded to it. The way adults carry themselves, children are watching.
Yes.
So you look at politics, how before politicians, no matter what side of the coin you were on, you would at least respect one another. You may differ in your views. However, one thing that you had in common was you cared about what happened in this country, or you cared about this country. So if nothing else, you came together for that reason. When we see so much bickering and fighting, when Kory mentioned about the coaches, you know, the coaches are fighting, the parents are fighting one another because it's all about a win. It seems that that's what it's all about now, about winning. And so if our children are seeing us adults act like that, then how could we really tell them it's not the right way to act? Because quite frankly, what can we say if they say, well, you do it, and
Right.
we can't, nor should we use the excuse, well, I'm grown, I do what I want. No, what you're doing is you're teaching your children that that behavior is appropriate. Wouldn't you all agree?
Well, that's what grown folks do. If you restated what you just said, you know, I'm grown, that's what I can do it. Well, that's what grown folks do. So one day I'm gonna be grown, so I might as well get the practice in right now.
And just to piggyback off of what you said, Jocelyn, one day we were on some notifications, and we were pulling up to a home to talk with this father about his son potentially having gang activity. And so they set off. So of course the police jumped in, went after them. We pulled them over and everything. But the way this dad showed out in front of JSO while his son watched it terrified me, because you've just given your son the green light to do that to JSO. And what is going to be the police's reaction? I pray to God that they don't feel threatened.
Right.
They don't have the need to feel like they have to use lethal force. But you've just literally given your son the pass to literally show himself. And think about Jordan Davis.
Right.
Think about our Trayvon Martins. Think about our young black men that are, that we deal with the gangs, but we also have to teach our young black men how to survive, period.
Right.
How to have proper interactions with the police. And you just showed your son he's already on the police radar for being involved with some kind of gang activity.
Yep.
And now you've just shown him how to show himself to authority, to the police.
With my dad's approval.
Exactly. That's key right, Dr. Key. With my dad's approval, because he just showed me how to approve.
Well, there is a question coming in. You guys may not be able to answer it, but you have to throw it out there. Why is it so easy for black youth and maybe just anybody, but why is it so easy for them to get guns, as many guns as we have in our community? We don't have a gun factory in our community. They're coming in from somewhere. Why is it so easy? Anybody would?
You can get guns from anywhere.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know where, though. So that's amazing to me when you say that, Kory. I mean, I would think legitimately I would have to go to a gun store. But for you to say I can get it from anywhere, that just blows my mind.
Well, it's just contraband in any way. And, you have to kind of shift perspective to someone in that situation. A gun is just a tool. A gun is protection, a way to earn money, a way to defend yourself, a way to instill fear, a way to climb up any type of, social ladder in that type of lifestyle. So we live in, a very, I don't want to say gun happy state, but for lack of better terminology, we live in a state where, you don't even have to register your weapons. As long as you pass that initial check, you can buy a weapon. Guns are stolen. I don't know the percentage, but majority of people who own guns own more than one weapon. They own more than one gun. And they're stolen out of cars, they're stolen out of houses. And you steal them and then you sell them. That's it. Or you have someone who have a criminal record, they buy the weapons and then you disperse them among your associates who need it. It's simple as that. There's a gun shop on every corner. I'm not getting into the gun debate. But there's a gun store on every corner, just logistically speaking. And as long as you have a clean record and you have money, you can buy a gun. It's just a case of either waiting 3 days if you don't have a concealed weapons license, or getting it right there when you buy it. If you have
Well, I have to say this: there is a bill. I just got to say it. Being a bill before the Florida legislature right now, where it is, it's just a kind of maybe eliminating, for lack of better description, eliminating the need to go get a gun license and just a carry. Carry license, open and carry or something along. Like we're back in the Wild Wild West. And I'm not so sure that the four of us and those that are listening, many of us may just think that that's crazy, but with the legislature that we have, I'm not so sure that would not pass.
Oh, I think there's a very strong chance of that passing.
Yeah,
because so look at the scope of what we're discussing right now. We're discussing gang violence, teen and young men engaging in gun violence, and one of the proposed solutions is always going to be arm yourself so you can deal with it.
Yes.
So people are going to say, okay, since there are criminals or people committing crime with weapons, I'll just have access to a weapon immediately.
Half of Americans own guns.
Yeah.
So I think education and how to properly store guns are going to be important. Some data from JSO: 80% of gun crimes were committed by a stolen gun.
Yep.
Wow. So protecting that gun.
People all the time to keep your guns locked.
And there are
people keeping them in their cars and not locking their cars.
90% of the guns stolen are stolen out of the vehicle.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
it makes it difficult to bring justice. And check this out. About a good 60% of guns that are used in crime have been committed in another crime.
Yeah.
So what happens is Addison, and what these young kids don't know who's joining gangs, Addison is a gang member. Addison kills somebody with a gun. Addison no longer has that gun. He gives it to me, who's 15. And the police pulled me over and I got this gun. I don't know where I got it from. Now they just linked me and this gun to a homicide that happened.
Ballistics on it and everything.
So you don't know the background of the gun, but that background will be attached to you if you have possession of it when you get pulled over by the police.
And they may not think you did it. They know you know something.
Right,
you have the name at least of where you got it from, and they're going to know, either they're going to be the one that did it or know someone.
And some of them don't care if you're the one that actually did it. It's just
Exactly.
put away another.
They got a gun. They got a suspect. They got another. I don't want to say what I want to say, but they got another.
Negro in jail.
Another one of us.
Yeah.
Right.
So guys, how are communities affected by gang activity?
Adversely, beyond adversely. Consequently, drastically, catastrophically. We've seen public perception now. Black neighborhoods are characterized, and I'm not saying it's true. I disagree. I don't think it's true. Characterized by drugs and gun violence. And it's heartbreaking. It's horrible, but that's a public perception now. Don't go to that hood, you'll get shot. If you're not a gang member, they're not going to get shot. Gang members don't shoot random people for fun. It's stuff like that. Whether it's the east side or the north side, or they call it, it's out east. If you're from Jacksonville, it's called out east.
Right.
But yeah, it's that's no man's land. Those are the bad lands. You'll get shot if you go out there. I live in Jacksonville all my life. I go to east side almost every day. When I worked for, multiple agencies, the state, everyone. I've never even been mugged. It's about your associations, what you deal with, who you know.
That's true. And one thing, Addison, that Kory has taught me when he's gone out with JSO, and not obviously he doesn't tell me, specifically where he's going, but what he has shared though is gang members live all over Jacksonville. They don't just live on one side of town.
No.
And people think that when you talk about people characterizing certain parts of town as the bad side of town, and that's where gang members live. Am I right, Kory? Isn't that what you've shared?
That's true. And last Thursday we went out. I shared this with Jocelyn as well. Last Thursday, probably the median cost of the home we went to last week, probably the lowest house probably cost $300,000. We were in $500,000 home neighborhoods, knocking on doors. You have moms whose sons are 14 and 15, just want to be in a gang, jumping out of 2-story windows, out of almost $1 million home. And if friends from the east side run up and get them, take them. So it's spreading. And how does it affect our community? Let's go back to that shooting that happened in the Riverside. Riverside is a very nice community. They don't see violence, but they just had a shootout. You had residents literally move out of the Riverside area until the person who owned the home put the tenants out because they turned the home into a music studio. Again, it's going back to this rapping. The person that was shot was a very known rapper in Jacksonville. Right. So it's not just affecting just the east side. It's not just affecting just the north side. It's affecting all areas of town. We've been out to Jacksonville Beach. We've been out into deep in Mandarin. We've been out to Monument. We've been out to Kernan and Atlantic. We've been out to Beach and Hodges. We've been everywhere.
More drugs are sold outside of the north side. More drugs are sold on the south side of the beaches. That's where the market is.
You notice you don't see drug dealers on the corner anymore.
No.
Right.
You're not selling.
There's no money there. There's no money.
You're not selling $10 to Willie Earl up the street anymore.
No, there's no money.
You're selling $100 to the doctor who lives in a nice neighborhood. The game has really changed.
Man.
Ray is like George Jefferson. He's moving on up.
Yeah.
That's
what they do.
Someone just posted, is it safe to say involved parenting and community involvement could reduce the growth of gangs?
Definitely. I think, law enforcement is only reactive. It's enforcing the law. It's not solving societal ills. It's not community improvement or recovery. It's law enforcement. So law enforcement can only act if a law is broken. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't put the burden on the police, but putting the burden on the police will never give us a true proactive solution. They're there to control, they're there to reduce damage and mitigate harm that's caused to residents, to protect property, to protect life. So the burden is on more than just the community and the parents. The burden is on the government as well, outside of law enforcement, whether that's politicians, legislators, whoever you want to refer to. But some of the burden is on the community, and we've for decades we've heard of Take Our Community Back, all those movements. The mission is great. It's just figuring out how. But,
so the next time I'm asked to mentor a child, I need to sign up, huh?
Yeah,
You do.
One of us, either do it or you find someone who can. But the issue is those children who are even open to mentoring, those aren't the ones, causing gun violence.
Well, Ms. Turner, you just raised a point that even one of the people that have chimed in on the discussion. They ask about what organizational tools are currently available to address parent and community involvement. And if I expand on that, it's like there's a lot of organizations out there that are more or less organized organizations. For instance, any of the Greek organizations, even the organizations that I'm part of, the Black Physicians in Duval County, there are probably psychological organizations, psych workers, social workers, yada yada yada. I can ad infinitum. You can name various organizations, but how many of them are actually going out trying to help, as you guys mentioned?
So that's where the answer
youth and so on and so on.
Right. You have SOS, Save Our Sons. You have 100 Black Dads.
Right.
No, yeah,
100 Black Men.
100 Black Men. I'm sorry, 100 Black Men. Yeah. So there are multiple grassroots organizations, but we need more. We need to create more. There are more kids. There will always be more kids than organizations can serve. So
I'm going to probably get in trouble for saying this, but that's okay.
Yeah, don't say it.
I'm going to say it. I think a lot of our grassroots organizations got to take this image of making their name great off the table.
Right.
We have too many community partners or community leaders that's only trying to build a name for themselves, build a name for their organization, build a name for them to run for city council, getting their name in the mix and trying to be connected to the next sheriff or the next mayor. It's beyond, we're beyond that. We have young men. When I first got here, there was a 13-year-old here who had a hit out for his life because he made a rap video. I mean, they tried to kill him. His mom was a prominent vice principal at a school here in Jacksonville. No one knows this person is, but they had to relocate. Mom had to literally take her son. They had to move out of state. And so again, when I hear of community partners, people working together in a community, is it about what you can do? Is it about what you can name? Or is it really truly about saving lives? Because I'll say it and I'll move on. If it's about saving lives, you'll do it without the grant money.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's really about saving lives, you will do it without the cameras being there.
Right.
You'll make a difference. And so I'm the type person that get involved that you can make news. Don't get involved because the news is there.
Right.
Well, before Kory, before you get off, since you decided you want to get in trouble, let me get in more trouble. I think that you hit a mark, not necessarily about the particular group of people that I'm about to. Where's our city council? Where's our Black city council members? I don't hear anything from them until election time. And are they addressing? That goes for any of these state, any of these offices that they want to run, whether it's state or local. We need to hear from them on ideas on how to help us tackle this problem, particularly when it comes to gun violence and as it relates to gang violence, and just gangs in particular, because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. I know that's an old saying, but when some of them, when they get off into these gangs, their minds are gone, and they could have been brilliant, have really smart people, smart kids.
Oh yeah,
are led astray.
Oh yeah,
and we miss out on that talent as a society.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. I agree.
And we've had a few comments. One of my favorite nonprofit organizations, Gooder, says that the biggest challenge to support and help is not the number of groups, it's logistics. There is no one coordinating all efforts. And I think, we've had many conversations about the number of nonprofits that there are in Jacksonville. And everybody seems to think that their organization is better than the other. Like, no, how can we not compete, but really focus on the families we're trying to serve? Organizations are good. Organizations, another comment, organizations are good, but how do we get neighborhood folks to be more involved and build more social capital so kids have numerous positive adults they can rely on? Any of you, your thoughts on that?
I think we have to coordinate. I think the answer is in our community. I think the answer is internal. The answer will never come from the government. The answer will never come. Exactly, Lorraine. What Lorraine just put. Exactly. We have to do it ourselves. The answer is within us. It's in our community. It's in our leaders. And I think we've become I'm just worried about my household society, not just the Black community, not just Jacksonville, not just Florida, the world in general. We've become a lower context culture. And when it comes to context cultures, is it about community and village, or is it about just you and your family? And due to technology just taking off and just the safety aspect, everyone just wants to be safe at this point. We're worried about just my individual safety. But you have to understand, if the community is safer, you're going to be safer. And and that's just the issue we're running into. It's bigger than just Jacksonville or Florida or the U.S. It's the world. We're too focused on, we splinter. We're too focused on just our household. And, it's a village. Your household is only as safe as your community is.
So what are some prevention efforts targeted at limiting youth involvement in gangs?
That exists already, or you're saying
yeah?
Kory can attack that.
We're the only anti-gang prevention program in the city of Jacksonville.
Wow.
And what's that called, Kory?
The Inspire program. Through the partnership of Child Health, our contract came through Kids Hope Alliance, which applied for it through OJP, which is federal government money. And I can tell you, we have a great executive director in Vicki Wadowich, but this even began to tickle the surface of the issues that we have. And again, it goes back to what you said, Dr. Kane, our elected officials. I haven't heard anyone talk about the gang problem we have in Jacksonville.
Right.
When you walk through our communities, now we used to have things set up. Pine Forest, here T. Jones Community Center is open every day when I went to Pine Forest Elementary Schools. How many of our community centers are non-operating right now? They're not operating. Team Up, after school programs are decreasing.
Team Up, Gear Up for the older kids.
Look at the number of kids participating in parks and recreation. They're going down. So a sense of community, and all these things to me are anti-gang prevention programs, but we've gotten away from community.
Well, and that, when I mentioned, when I brought in our politicians, it was not to say that they're the ones that only ones that can save us.
Right.
You know, one of our listeners, we do. I agree with him. We have to save ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to, as a community, as a Black community especially, we have to get involved and help save our community. However, we do elect officials and pay officials to help in that with the guidance and help to be able to get some of the services and some of the monies that may be needed for us to do the outreach. You know, you two guys can sit here tonight and don't take this wrong way and preach to the heavens. You know, if you can't get that message out,
right?
Okay,
right.
and to a broader audience, you know, it may work well with the audience you do have, but it's something that we have to be able to get out to the broader community, and we actually do need our politicians' help. We need the mayor, we need the chief of police, we need and our city council, because this is our city. It's not just a Black city or a white city. It's our city that we need to go and step out. Everybody needs to do their part, including the politicians.
Yeah.
And sadly, Dr. Kane, sorry, Addison, sadly, a lot of folks don't get involved until something tragic happens within their own families. And so what we're trying to urge people tonight, which is why we're having this discussion about gangs and gang prevention, because we wanted to bring it to the forefront that gangs are real in our city. It's not just the gangs happening in other states. Gangs are right here active in our communities. And I'm glad you mentioned about organized sporting events and activities for youth, because quite honestly, I know that we can't compare the last 20 months, obviously because of the pandemic, that we know things had to shut down. However, we just couldn't stand by and just watch kids just do nothing. Mm-hmm. We need to be creative as a community to figure out what as a community can we do to keep kids engaged. And I'd even like to put this out, and I'm not sure if any of you can comment on it, but it's something that has been near and dear to my heart. And I actually have had the conversation with other people. I look at development. When developers build communities, they don't even build playgrounds on the properties anymore. So where kids are supposed to play, that's when they start wandering out of their little neighborhood, going out looking for stuff. Mm-hmm. What's so wrong with building a playground on a property in a community so that children will have somewhere to play? Teenagers will have, even if they have a volleyball net and basketball. I mean, just simple as that, you know, some slides and swings. What's so wrong? And so when we talk about what can elected officials do, you mandate that as these developments come up, that they have to build playgrounds on the properties.
Excellent, Rob. Excellent.
You know what I mean? And that way, so when we talk about, you know, it is a village. It's all of our responsibilities to think creatively. What can we do as a community? So don't just sit and listen like, oh, this is so bad, or oh, that's their problem. No, it's all of our problem, because just as I started at the beginning of the show and shared that at my own home, somebody tried to break in my car. And probably for the very reason that you all said, they were hoping that it was unlocked and hoping there was a gun inside, right? And the person drove off on a bicycle. Really? So obviously they were not looking for any big ticket items. They were looking for something like a gun that they can take. Someone said organized sports doesn't have the same effect because the coaches who truly care about kids cannot use the old school method to train because of the limitation. Kids have rights. Your thoughts?
I agree. I agree. We could not play. We could not even practice without Coach Mike's permission. Right. He was involved in school. He set you down. Now it's all about winning.
Right.
It's not about building character anymore. It's not about building integrity anymore. I was thinking about you talking about the playground that was built. I definitely wasn't born, wasn't even thought of during during the civil rights movement. But I thank God for the civil rights movement. But we lost something. We lost something when we integrated our schools. We lost something. Integrated our communities.
My brother, I'm from originally from Miami, not Miami, Fort Lauderdale. So I'm from South Florida.
Right.
But my brother brought something to my attention a few years back. And he talked about how these organized sports, football, how many of the teams were actually being endorsed by drug dealers. In other words, they're the ones that were bringing in all of the money for the equipment,
the trips,
and they were betting.
Everything.
They were betting on these kids as to who would win huge sums of money, thousands, $50,000. My team going and all that kind of stuff. And it's just ridiculous as to what the role that they played in influencing those kids out there on the football field. We have to find a way that if we're going to do those sports, we got to find a way to hold those coaches and those team managers or whomever accountable to certain standards. And that's probably going to take something to do with, again, politicians and so on and so on.
And by the way, and thank you. As dismal as that may sound, Dr. Kane, that you're absolutely right. Sadly, we go to who we know that will fund some of our efforts. So I always say when it's election time, we need to make sure that we hold people accountable.
True.
We remember these conversations. We don't just talk about or vote for people just because we know them, or I'm going to say it, I'm going to get in trouble now, Kory, that they look like us. But we need to vote for people who really stand for making a difference in our communities and making sure that our children and our families are taken care of.
No more chicken and watermelon.
One of the things that somebody asked is how do you get in touch with they wanted a website for the Inspire program, and it's simply going to the partnershipforchildhealth.org, partnershipforchildhealth.org, and you will learn more about not only the Inspire program, but also about the other programs and services of the Partnership for Child Health, and also with the program that Addison worked with, the Center for Child Rights. You will learn about some of the great work that the Center for Child Rights does, led by Betsy Dobson. I mean, they're doing phenomenal work. I just started working with both of these guys a few months ago, and I can honestly admit that they've enlightened me, because I had no idea the things that were happening right here in my town. And it really is, it's a sad conversation to have, but it's our sad reality. And until and unless we do better as a community and have these hard conversations, these open and honest conversations, we didn't expect, by the way, to solve all the problems of Jacksonville tonight in one conversation. But Dr. Kane even said to me, I have to share with you, Kory and Addison, he was like, wait a minute, these are two real heavy subjects. Should we have them as separate conversations? Because this is a lot, but I think that there was some value to having both of you on tonight to really enlighten us and our audience to what's going on. We have reached our 1 hour mark. That's usually where we go. We don't want to keep you all night long, but we definitely want to invite you back in the future for more discussion. Dr. Kane, did you have any other questions before we start wrapping up the show?
Well, all I would say is I'll go ahead and say my piece now and thank you gentlemen for coming in. As Ms. Turner alluded to earlier, I wonder, would we have enough time in an hour to cover both of these subjects well? And I was proven right. We covered them, but it's not enough time. And I hope that we can bring you guys back. We may do a special where we also bring in, it may be that there's a sheriff election coming up, and we may want to know, what are your ideas? There's a city council election coming up. What are your ideas? As to how to address these communities, because the community's growth will be stifled if people feel afraid to go into their community. And when I say people, businesses that may want to bring jobs into that community, the growth of that community may be stifled quite a bit if their jobs are not brought into it. And jobs won't be brought into a crime-ridden community because people are afraid. So I say this before I get off. One of my rudest introduction to gangs in Jacksonville occurred about 3 years ago, maybe as long as 5. I can't quite remember. But I came to my office one morning and all kind of gang signs was painted on my wall. I think, Ms. Turner, you got a chance to look at it before I actually had to take it off. And I was surprised because I'm going like, whoa, I didn't know that, that gangs were had that kind of presence in that neighborhood. And I am on Jacksonville's north side. I chose to be there because I felt it was a place that needed the services that I could provide. And while I could, this is not doing one of these pat on the back things. While I could make money in other places, I still felt that it's a sense of community that I wanted to keep my practice on the Jacksonville's north side and serve that community because it was kind of the community I grew up in. And with that, I want to thank you guys for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Turner for our exit.
So again, great discussion tonight. And one thing, gentlemen, that we like to do before we end the show is give you an opportunity to say your final thoughts about today's discussion or anything else that you think our listeners need to hear. And I will start with Addison Sims from the Center for Child Rights. Yes, I'm giving the center one more plug. Addison, go ahead.
I appreciate it, Jocelyn. But I guess to wrap it all up, I don't want us as a community to think it's all our fault. I can't get into it now, but it started a long time ago. It's not something we chose. It's not because of the cells in the melanin of our skin. It's not characterized by our nature. There are a lot of societal and institutional factors and contributing actions, intentional and indirect actions that led up to this. And it would be any people group's reaction. I don't want us to take on that like it's completely our fault. It's any people group in the situation would react the same way. So all I'm going to say to wrap it up, I know, like you said, we talked about some heavy stuff. I want us to see that, it's not our fault. I don't want us to see it as that. It's something we're dealing with as a community, as a people group, as a sub-society. It's something we're dealing with, struggling with, experiencing, however you want to frame it. It's not something we brought here. Let's just say that. But yeah, that's my closing piece.
Not our fault, but it's our problem right now.
Right.
We need to address it.
Not our fault, but it's our problem. Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you, Addison. And Kory from the Partnership for Child Health.
I want to say thank you. I call Auntie Jocelyn at work. Thank you, and Dr. Kane for allowing me to come on tonight. And just to wrap up what Addison has said, there are 51 documented gangs in Jacksonville.
How many?
51.
Oh, that's what I heard.
51. We expect that number to increase probably by 10% within the next half a year. But I'm reminded of a scripture that says the kingdom of God suffereth violence, but the violent take it back by force. And so I love the way you said, Dr. Kane, we're not the cause, but we can help fix the problem. We have the solution. And so anyone that's listening to this podcast, need our Black businesses back in our neighborhood. We lost, when I think about the north side and certain pockets of the city, you don't see no prominent leaders living. Listen, the preachers don't even live in the hood no more. You used to always have a preacher and a deacon in the hood, but now there's nobody in the hood to respect. Nobody in the hood to respect. So I just want to appeal to our people. We are the solution to this problem. We have to get back to a sense of community, family, village, neighborhood. And when we get that right, I believe we can see a change happen. We're not going to wait on the elected officials. We're not going to wait on the sheriff's office. We're not going to wait on another grant or another program to arise because another Black kid was shot. let's do our part now. And so I say that we had an opportunity to buy a building on the south side, and we just bought a big raggedy building right there on East 4th Street in Spearn. And God is allowing us to undertake a huge project starting the first week in January. And I always ask myself, why are we here? Why are we at this location? And this quote came to my mind: making church people happy by your sermon, nothing. But getting a non-believer to give their life to Christ and think about eternal salvation is all, it means everything. So I don't want to focus my attention on someone that's already saved. I want to focus my attention on that child that does not have that hope. So I just put an appeal right back to our people of color. Let's invest in us. Let's get back to where we were before.
Wow, thank you. And I forget about the pastor in Kory. Thank you so much for enlightening us tonight. Definitely not a conversation to end tonight. Definitely a conversation we want to have again in the future. To our listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for chiming in with your comments. We really appreciate it. Again, if you have any ideas or suggestions for future show topics, please send us an email at info@pauseforthetruth.com. As always, stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, and thank you again tonight for listening.
Don't forget the recognition for our technological guru.
Call Tyrone Jackson. Call Tyrone.net for your technology needs, because he's the one that makes sure that we broadcast clearly. Good night, everybody.
Good night.